Righty. So week 15, almost done. I know it may seem crazy, but we are 15, 16, 17, and your last dev is due in week 17. I've already talked about that some. This is going to be the week, the attendance that I will post a link to the updated sign up sheets. So check that out. I will put that in this attendance post in case you're here early. I will put it there at 10 o'clock on April 25th, the morning, that's Monday, for a link for the signups. And I always like to have everybody know at the same time they're going to be out there. And there's no different schedules for the classes because they're going to run the same timeline this week. Okay, so in week 15, we start our last concept for this class, and one that is such an important topic because, and I know you may not always think about this, but every app you use pretty much is doing some kind of network request. Okay. I think about Facebook, or I think about Twitter, or I think about TikTok, any of those. I mean, any app of any significance is going to have to make some network call. Okay. And so your code has to be able to make that call, hit that endpoint. We call it hitting the end endpoint, making an API call and an HTTP request. There's different names, but the point is that it's reaching out, hitting some website endpoint, and bringing back most likely what we call a payload, or something you're going to process. So JavaScript, by its nature, had to actually modify the language to handle this because JavaScript, by its nature, actually is synchronous. So if you look at just this image, right? So we've been writing, for the most part, even though we've been using callbacks, we've been writing synchronous code. We do one thing, we do the next thing, and so on and so forth. So it's a waterfall concept, right? But when we're writing asynchronous code, we need to be able to make that network call and do other things while we're waiting for that network call to come back. I mean, possibly you might just be, making that network call. Now, by the way, I'm saying network here. There could be other things that could be asynchronous. It could be not just, it could be making a file, creating a file, doing a database credit operation. There's other things we could be doing, but we do one thing, and then we're waiting to come. It's coming back, and then when it comes back, it processes that. So just know, by nature, JavaScript is synchronous, and we are going to learn to write asynchronous code, and the language needed to be modified in order for you to actually take advantage of the modern infrastructure of the web, the internet, and the application stacks that we write for. Okay, and this is great, right? And you can see the benefit, right? Imagine a user, when they make a network request, your program just freezes until there's nothing to do till the next thing comes along, right? Because there's gonna be some waiting time. So in this case, it just shows this breakdown. And by the way, Andrew does a really good job in this section that you're going to go through. Okay, so you can check that out. But I just want to give you that concept, is that's what we're covering in this last section 11. And the way we're going to cover it is we're going to cover it with three different, and this is something you may have heard, I've said it before, is a design pattern. So the first thing we're going to learn to do is to do an XML HTTP request using callbacks. And we've already seen callbacks in this course, so that's not completely new. But the way you're writing the code and having the callbacks handled is new. So that's the first way we learn it, and this is kind of the older way. But I'll tell you, it's still very relevant in the industry. I still see code running XML HTTP request because it is kind of legacy. If you're writing new stuff, you're probably using one of these two paradigms here. So this week we're focusing here, okay? And next week we get introduced to promises and async await. And this one, when we get to here, is actually going to look the most like what we think of as synchronous, even though it's going to be asynchronous. So it's kind of the most natural for us. But and these two definitely can and often do. You may have asynchronous functions, but inside of them you may have also promises. So these two are a little more tightly coupled. But we're going to learn all three of these different design patterns. But in learning them, really what you're learning, and Andrew talks about this, but I really wanted to provide this particular video, which I have here, which is kind of the classical conversation when somebody first sent this to me, because it was really understanding the event loop. In order to write asynchronous, well, synchronous code as well follows the event loop, but to understand asynchronous, you need to understand the event loop. Now, this is from 2014. That's why I kind of call it the classic. I looked at some other ones to see if there were any that I thought were better, and I don't think there are. Okay, so and this one's longer. I'm not requiring you to watch it, but I just say if you have some time and you want to deepen your knowledge here, spend a little time watching this one. Okay. Okay, coming back to here. So the other thing is in our code up this week, there has been some changes. As you may know, when I go through and I do the work, let me actually come in here. I'll come back to this in a minute. So when I when I get ready to do the week, I actually go through and do the actual work myself to remind myself if there's anything that in Andrew's code that could throw you off. And for this time, there could be. So I give you notes in here about this, so I definitely would check this out. But it's right here when he does. He hits he was trying to find a country code, and so this is the newest API endpoint in his video. I think he looks at version 2. And also he looks at, I think, country. It might be country code. And now it's no longer that. That's the key he looks for. It's CCA2. So I just give you that. Make sure you do check that out, because otherwise, now I think the version 2 is still out there. You can check that out, but it's kind of fun to actually hit the more modern ones in case you ever in the future wanted to use them, meaning the modern endpoints. Okay. Okay. So let's see what else. Oh yeah. So now for our learn together this week. Okay. I do have an older video for the learn together, and I have it up, but I went over it today just to look at it, and it seems perfectly fine for what we're going to do. But I just want to give you just an overview. So you're going to be writing the older paradigm of asynchronous using HTTP, XML HTTP request. And here's the endpoint you're going to do. You're going to hit, and you're going to handle that through callbacks. So that's kind of like the step one. And here's what that would look like, is just actually every time I refresh the page, it goes out and brings in however many, I think 100, 200, right? So that's kind of step one, is to get that working. And then what I want you to do is add some functionality, right? I can imagine different pieces of functionality you could add here. Like I will do this as well before I record my code for this. I'm thinking what would be fun is to kind of do a paging, where you have a large record set and you only show 10, and then you give buttons for the next 10 or go back previous. Figuring out how to program those would be fun. So there's just all kinds of, you can make it look nicer for sure, but I want you to actually add some functionality to this call somehow, to this display of information after you make the call. Okay. So to get full points, you'll need to do that. Okay, I've talked about that. So I talked about the dev, right? So our last dev. So we're in covering if you choose the second option for your dev. This is now us talking about and learning about how to write asynchronous code to make API calls. So when you see find an API, what we're basically doing is you're writing asynchronous code by finding an API, and there can be various things that can trip up one here. APIs often now are behind a paywall. The idea is not to make you pay for it. You want to find free APIs, right? And you want to, if you can, based on what you want to do, you can do that as well. But I don't, I'm just telling you, there's various things that can cause one to have a challenge here from the way you make the call. And there's something called Coors, cross origin, not the beer. It's called cross origin origination. and I think it's actually that. But that is a, a security that's built into the browser to I'm not spelling it right, but I will actually probably talk about it next week that can trip some students up here because the browsers have gotten much more security conscious about letting clients, and when we're running the browser, we're the clients here, make API calls. So that can just throw you off a little bit. So I'll have something covering that next week. But just to say, right here, we are in the second option covering those concepts. I would, if I was you, make a decision pretty soon about which method you're going, which option you're going to take. And as I said, if you're going to take three, then definitely come and talk to me. As I had said before, just to be clear, right, our dev is going to be due on the 12th of May. I will have code review sessions starting on the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and then on the 16th. The last ones will run on the 17th. And so the sooner you check out this schedule, which again I will release Monday the 25th at 10 p.m. Right, the sooner you check this out, if you need something outside of this, work with me as soon as possible. That way we can make sure that it works for both of our schedules. Okay. So by the time you see, if you happen to be in attendance early, I did this is a learn together, but if you happen to be in the attendance early, know that link will be shared in the attendance for week 15 on that April 25th at 9. Okay. All right, I think that's all I have. Have a great week. Hope you had a good spring break. For me, this is some of the first content I'm recording after spring break. So I look forward to connecting with you all either before or during our last dev for this class. Have a great one. See you later.